All right, hey y'all, it's your girl, Coach Bree Clay. For those of you that don't know me out there, I am a E. Michelle certified pleasure path practitioner. I am a sensual shadow work practitioner, a life coach, a sex and intimacy coach, and a lover of all things pleasure. I'm also the owner of Life After Divorce LLC, which is an organization that is dedicated for women who want to come out of their shadows and learn how to thrive and not just survive. I help women learn to embrace pleasure by identifying the barriers and learning how to overcome them. Just to let y'all know, I will be going on every day this week at 8 o'clock p.m. Central Standard Time. You can also find me on Instagram, and my Instagram is at Bree Clay Harper, Your Life After Divorce. If you want to book a session with me, my email address, is booking@yourlifeafterdivorce.com. And so even though the brand is called Life After Divorce, I'm here to help all women, as I just said earlier. I want to help all women who feel broken and who are ready to live. Whether you're divorced, whether you're married, no matter what stage in life you're in, I want to help all women who want to come out of their shadows and really live life, enjoy life, embrace life. Okay, let me just go over a few housekeeping tips. So Life After Divorce is not just for divorced women, like I said. This space that we're in right now is a very safe place. We are not here to bully. We are not here to judge. We are not here to condemn. If there is somebody on here who goes in the comments and they do that, you will kindly be removed. Not to say I don't love you, but we just don't have any. This is a place of peace, okay? And this is a place of growth. I ask that anything that I share with you, if you want to take notes, that's fine. Again, I ask that you check out my website, www.yourlifeafterdivorce.com. A lot of the questions and answers are going to be in the comments, and also I'll probably address them maybe in a separate video, just because of the way that this is going. And I also wanted to let you guys know one last thing for this week and this week only. If you go to my website and you book a free discovery call, you will receive a free one-on-one 45 minutes session with me. Okay, so a free 45-minute one-on-one session with me if you go on my website this week and book your free discovery call. That is an awesome, awesome, awesome deal. It is only this week only. Okay, so the topic that we are going to talk about today or tonight is called, I titled it "The Mistakes That People Make when they're in survival mode." But let's kind of rethink that a little bit. What I really want to go over and discuss with y'all, basically, and I'm pulling up my notes right here. That's why you see me looking all around, because I'm pulling up my notes. Okay, so I'm going to say maybe the mindsets. We're going to go over the mindsets. They're not necessarily the wrong mindsets, but they are the mindset that people who are in survival mode tend to hold on to and tend to believe. Okay. And so we know that that can be a very strong barrier to intimacy and a very strong barrier to pleasure. So one of the mindsets is believing pleasure must be earned. Okay. So meaning a lot of people who are in survival mode walk around and say, I don't deserve to have joy right now. I have to suffer before I'm allowed to allow myself to experience pleasure or have pleasure in my life. Once everything is done, then I'll be able to rest, and then I'll be able to concentrate on pleasure and having this life, that I'm thriving and not just surviving. And we know that that's not true. So when you have that type of mindset, pleasure becomes conditional instead of natural. Okay, so pleasure is not something that you naturally allow yourself to do. You do it based on these conditions. When everything is right, then I will. And that's not the right mindset to have. That is a barrier to pleasure. Another thing, when you feel guilty for enjoying yourself. Okay, you want to have a good time, but I feel bad. So when you're in survival mode, a lot of times you feel uncomfortable when things are peaceful. It's like chaos is normal. Chaos is familiar. Peace feels like it's suspicious. I'm not in no drama. Something ain't right. and you tend to feel like that when you're in survival mode. This is how you know you're there. Chaos is familiar. Everything is a disarray. Everything is all over the place. And that's comfortable for you. But we don't have to be like that. You disconnect from your body. Okay, when you're in survival mode, you're disconnected from your body, meaning instead of feeling like you're in your body, instead of operating from a sense of freedom and a sense of peace, you feel like you have a responsibility to be in this survival mode. So you don't notice when you're being touched. You don't notice your desires. You ignore your sensuality. You don't know how to relax. You're emotionally you don't know how to, you're emotionally unavailable. So intimacy is not even in your brain. You don't even know how to find pleasure in the simple moments. And this is how you know you're disconnected from your body. Touch, desire, sensuality, emotional intimacy, pleasure, in the finding pleasure in just the small things. When you're not able to do that, you are in a survival mode. And this is not good for your health, and it's not good for your intimate life. It's not good for let's just say your sex life in general. Okay. And we just want to make sure that we identify these things, because tomorrow on the video, I'm going to tell you tools to help you come out of that mode. Okay. So treating pleasure as an extra and not as a necessity. Okay. So pleasure is not your necessity. Intimacy is not your necessity. Instead, you prioritize work. You prioritize caregiving, whether it's for your parents, whether it's for your kids. You prioritize stress. I gotta get this done. I gotta get this done. When people tell you woosah, I'm not gonna woosah. I want to be out of my mind. You kind of prioritize that. You also prioritize obligations. Prioritize those obligations. I don't want to do this, but I have to do this and I have to do that. And so a lot of times what happens is these are the things that you neglect when you're in that mode. When you're in survival mode, instead of prioritizing the right things, instead of embracing these things that I'm getting ready to name, you neglect them. Some of the things that you neglect is rest. How many of us just walking around here just tired? Because we're in survival mode, and that's not where we're supposed to be. We are not enjoying pleasure at all. Okay. Laughter. We neglect laughter. Somebody's telling something and it's funny and you can't even laugh because you got all this stuff going on up in here. Okay. You neglect intimacy. Again, I said my platform is life after divorce, but I'm really talking to any woman who's ever been broken. You could even be broken in your marriage. You could be married and be divorced, separated from your spouse, in your brain and in your body and in your emotions. So intimacy is something that you are not tapping into, whether it's your own intimacy or whether it's intimacy with your partner. Creativity. You neglect creativity. You're not coming up with new things. You're not doing maybe those hobbies that you were doing before. Movement. You're not even getting out exercising, or you're not going and walking around a park, or, maybe riding a bike, or just doing anything that gets you out moving. Affection. Affection is a big one. Your partner or your kids or you can't give affection and you can't receive affection. So you neglect affection. Another thing you neglect when you're in survival mode is emotional connection. You're not emotionally connected to yourself, to your partner, to anyone. So then there's a barrier to intimacy, because how do you get to the mindset where pleasure is your number one focus? And you can't do that. So a lot of times also the mindset we have when we're in survival mode is we think that pleasure only means sex. Pleasure only means sex. And that is not true. Pleasure is much bigger than sexuality. Pleasure can be a deep conversation that you have with someone. Pleasure could be dancing. Pleasure could be just sitting there and being quiet, just sitting in the silence. Pleasure could be eating a great meal. Pleasure could be traveling. Pleasure could be listening to some music that you like. Pleasure can be emotional safety. Pleasure can mean being desired. Okay. Pleasure can mean feeling beautiful. When's the last time you got dressed up and you felt beautiful? When was the last time you not even got dressed up, just when you just looked at yourself and you just felt beautiful? Okay. Saying no without guilt. That's a huge barrier to intimacy. I'm going to tell you that right now. Feeling guilty about saying no. No is a powerful word. No is not for the weak. No will set you free. I'm telling you, no will set you free. So another mindset is suppressing desire because of shame. And that's something we talk about in the sensual shadow works. A lot of times you feel, especially after a divorce, a separation, a heartbreak, a disconnection, you start to feel this sense of shame, maybe through what you've been taught, growing up, or in your different churches, or in your environment, that you've learned that wanting to have pleasure and intimacy is dangerous. Sensuality is shameful. You should not feel sensual at all. And you should not want anybody to feel sensual about you at all. And we know that this is not true. But in that survival mindset, we suppress our desires because of these shames. We feel that shames makes you weak. If you need help from somebody else, you're weak. Okay, I'm not going to ask for no help, because then they're not going to think I'm this strong, independent person. And that's not true. A lot of times when you suppress desires based on shame, you feel that having pleasure makes you a selfish person. And that is not true. Allowing yourself pleasure and intimacy makes you a very selfless person. Okay, these things are needed in our life so that we can thrive. Living in a sense of survival mode and denying yourself pleasure and denying yourself intimacy is not the way we were created to be. We were created to flourish and to bloom. I have a couple more that I'm going to go over, and I may skip over a couple of the ones in my notes because I want to make sure I hit the hot ones, okay? So choosing numbness over feeling. So survival mode teaches you how to do emotional shutdown. Feeling that the numbness is going to block the pain. But we also know that numbness does not block pain. It blocks joy. It blocks intimacy. It blocks excitement. And it blocks connection. But the pain is still going to be there. Okay? And we need to know that going numb is not going to stop you from feeling what you're feeling. And it's not going to usher you into the world of pleasure and intimacy that you deserve to live in and to be in. So let me look at another one. Let's see, which other one do I want to go down? Okay, I want to go over this one. Ignoring what actually turns you on emotionally. So not just sexually, but also emotionally. And so the things that you tend to ignore are being pursued. I have a lot of people that I've worked with that, once they've gone through this divorce or this separation, and again, divorce is not just necessarily paper and pen and we're divorced. It could be your own separation, right? You're there in body, but you're not there in spirit and in mind. Presently body, but not present in spirit, not present in heart, not present in your brain. Okay. So being pursued is something that you start to ignore. You start to ignore being appreciated. Somebody may say, "Oh, I appreciate this." You're ignoring that. And because that's something that you're trying to block because of the sense that you're in this survival mode. You also begin to ignore feeling emotionally safe. Your emotional safety is not your priority. So that means your nervous system is now all over the place. If your nervous system is all over the place, your guards are up. If your guards are up, you are not allowing yourself to have pleasure. You're not allowing yourself to get into the world of intimacy because your guard is up. You're blocked. You're guarded. Being listened to. You ignore that. You don't care if your voice is heard. You don't care about anything like that. And that a lot of times leaves you frustrated. I know a lot of times I used to be so irritated. And I was like, why am I always so irritated? And I finally found out when I'm talking to people and I feel like I'm not being heard, it makes me angry. But I was ignoring that because I was in survival mode. So I wasn't paying attention to the fact that I wanted to be heard. Playfulness. You start to ignore playfulness. You're not playful anymore. Has anybody ever told you, man, you used to be so outgoing, you used to be so soft, you were so, gentle, you were so amazing, and now you just seem so dark and so gloomy and so down all the time. You're not even playful. Somebody will try to make a joke, or your husband or your friend may slap you on the behind, or may kind of grab you from the back, and you don't want any of that. Get away from me. I'm not playing no. You play too much. And we know there's a time and a place for everything. But when you're in survival mode, 95% of your time is not doing that. Okay. Anticipation. You stop anticipating stuff. You stop looking forward to things. You stop wanting to know, man, I wonder what tomorrow is going to bring. You know what? I wonder what's going to happen with this. You don't even anticipate anymore. You're just in autopilot, moving along and just day by day and all of that. Affection. You begin to ignore affection. Your partner may put his arm around you or their arm around you, and you don't want it. I'm ignoring that. Or the partner or your person may say, hey, you haven't touched my face in a long time. And you're like, okay. Yes, I did. I touched you yesterday or whatever. But you're ignoring those. Or they may be trying to show affection towards you, and you're not able to receive it because you're in survival mode. So these things that when they're trying to come to you, you tend to ignore them because of the mode that you're in. Now, a lot of us tend to think that survival mode means you're strong. Okay? I don't want to be soft. I don't want to be vulnerable. I don't want to receive anything. I can't have pleasure. I cannot have intimacy. I have to be strong, because when I lean myself to those things, I tend to feel like I'm weak. And so people take the survival mode as a badge of honor. I'm a strong woman because I'm surviving. That's not true, guys. Sorry, but it's not true. So you don't have to be like that. Okay. Let's see. So some people in the mindset of survival mode never learn what pleasure feels like for them. You don't know what pleasure feels like for you. You don't know what calms you down. You don't know what excites you. You don't know how to awaken your erotic self. You don't know how to awaken your intimate self. You doggone sure don't know what pleasure is. You don't know what makes you feel alive. You know what makes everybody else calm. You know what makes everybody else excited. You know what makes everybody else feel alive. But because you're in survival mode, you're not looking at yourself and saying, well, what about me? When do I feel alive? What am I excited about? When I got divorced, that's the first thing I asked myself. Bree, when do you feel alive? I don't know. What makes you excited? What do you like to do? Got me. You got me? I don't know. I didn't know. I was so focused on everybody else because I was in survival mode. I wasn't focused on me. And so when you're in survival mode, you don't know what pleasure feels like for yourself. And that is where I come into play, because I would love to help and work with you on coming out of those shadows, getting rid of those barriers, identifying the barriers, and then coming out of those barriers so that you can give yourself permission for pleasure. Okay? Believing that pleasure is irresponsible during hard seasons. Right now we're going through this. I cannot believe you're even thinking about pleasure at a time like this. I will give myself permission to have joy when my divorce is final. I will give myself permission to have joy, pleasure, intimacy when the kids are older. I will give myself permission to have pleasure when all my bills are paid, when my healing is complete, when life is perfect. Then I'll give myself permission for pleasure. Don't do it. Do it in the midst of the storm. Do it in the midst of everything that is going on. Okay? You got to remember that the pleasure is a part of your healing process whenever you're going through something. you want to make sure that pleasure is your birthright. And a lot of times when you're in a survival mode, you forget that pleasure is your birthright. Yes, I said it. Pleasure is your birthright. You have a right to have pleasure in your life. It is not a reward. It is not something you reserve only for certain people. It is not something that you apologize. Pleasure is your birthright. And I want that to stick with you. Having pleasure is often a pathway back to trust. Knowing how pleasure and intimacy works for you is being embodied. It's being confident. It's being emotionally safe. It's being able to be intimate unapologetically. And it's being able to know that you are alive. And to feel that you are alive and well and thriving in your body. Okay. And so I want to leave you all with that, with those things. If anything I said resonates with you, please make sure that you go in and that you put in the comments. If you want to talk more, say reset, and then we can have a conversation. But remember, this week and this week only, and when I say this week, I mean Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday only. If you book a free discovery call with me, you will get a free one-on-one 45-minute session. That's a great deal. So you want to make sure that you get in on that. And so with all of that, I've given you a lot. I want to close with this though. I want to thank all of you all who came on here and who listened to what I had to say. I know you could have been anywhere else. You could have been doing anything else, but you decided to come on and listen and hear what I had to say. And I thank y'all so much for that. My voice is